He handed me the cup himself. He watched me drink it, and he called it love. I want you to understand that part first, before anything else, before the hospital, before the will, before the morning I walked into that boardroom and watched his face go white. He poured it. He stirred it. He placed it in my hands and curled my fingers around the warm ceramic like a man tucking a child into bed. He looked into my eyes while I swallowed. He said, "Drink it all, sweetheart. You need your strength." I drank it all. I trusted him. My name is Eleanor Hale. I was 31 years old. I had been married to Adrian Voss for 6 years and engaged to him for 2 before that, and on the night he poisoned me, I was 3 weeks into a clinical immunotherapy trial that I had built with my own hands. The trial belonged to me. The compound belonged to me. I had spent 11 years of my life developing it, first as a doctoral student in Boston, then as the lead scientist at a small biotech firm in Seattle that my father had quietly funded the year before he died. The compound was meant to treat a specific autoimmune liver condition. It had a narrow therapeutic window. Too little? No effect. Too much? Hepatic failure inside 72 hours. Adrian knew the window. He had sat across from me at our kitchen table for a year while I explained it to him, while I drew the molecular diagram on napkins, while I told him exactly how much was safe and exactly how much would kill a person who did not have the condition the compound was designed to treat. I did not have the condition. The woman he was sleeping with did. Her name was Vivian Marsh. She had been my closest friend since graduate school. She was the one who introduced me to Adrian. She was the maid of honor at our wedding. She had been diagnosed 18 months earlier with the exact autoimmune profile my compound treated, and the trial I was running was the only one in the country with promising early data. There were 42 patients enrolled. The waiting list was 300 deep. Vivian was not on it. Vivian had been rejected by the screening committee because her case was too advanced, and she did not meet the inclusion criteria. I did not know any of that when Adrian handed me the cup. I knew only that I had come home exhausted, that he had drawn a hot bath and lit candles and made tea, that he sat on the edge of the tub and stroked my hair while I drank, that he told me he was proud of me. He kissed my forehead. He said, "You work too hard. Let me take care of you tonight." 40 minutes later, my vision blurred. My hands started shaking. I tried to stand up and could not. I remember the cold porcelain against my cheek. I remember him sitting on the bathroom floor with me, perfectly calm, not calling anyone, not reaching for his phone. I remember him saying, "I am so sorry, Eleanor. I have to. She is going to die without it." That was the moment. That was the only sentence that mattered. He had calculated the dose. He had needed enough of the compound out of the secured laboratory to treat her, and the only way to access that supply without triggering an investigation was to have it logged as administered to a patient. The patient was me. He had been siphoning small amounts for months, calibrated against my own body, recording it in the trial logs under fabricated patient IDs. The final dose he gave me that night was the leftover, the portion he could not justify giving Vivian without me asking questions. He poured it into my tea because he could not afford to throw it away. He killed me to hide his theft. My heart stopped at 3:47 in the morning. The paramedics restarted it in the back of the ambulance. I spent 11 days in a medically induced coma and another 6 weeks in a hepatic transplant unit at the University of Washington Medical Center, waiting for a liver that came from a 19-year-old motorcyclist whose family I will pray for every day for the rest of my life. When I woke up, the first thing I asked for was Adrian. He was not there. Vivian was not there. My mother was there. My older brother Marcus was there, flown in from London where he had been running the European division of my father's foundation for 8 years. Marcus told me what had happened. Marcus told me that Adrian had reported me to the hospital as having attempted suicide, that he had given them a story about my depression, my obsessive overwork, my recent erratic behavior. Marcus told me that Vivian had visited Adrian at our house every day while I lay in the coma. Marcus told me that the trial had been suspended pending an internal review, that my role as principal investigator was on hold, that the board of the biotech firm was meeting in 2 weeks to vote on whether to remove me permanently and install Adrian in my place. Adrian, who had a finance degree and had spent the last 4 years calling himself my partner in the company, even though he had never held a position there. Adrian, who was telling everyone that he had nursed me through my breakdown and that for the good of the patients, he was prepared, reluctantly, to step into leadership. I did not cry when Marcus told me. I want the record to show that. I did not cry. I asked him for water. I asked him for my laptop. I asked him to bring me the original lab notebooks from my office and not let anyone, not anyone, know that he had taken them. Marcus looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Ellie, what are you planning?" I said, "I am planning to live." He said, "That is not what I asked." I said, "I know." That was the awakening. That was the moment my face changed. The nurse came in to check my vitals, and she told me later that she was startled by my expression, that she had been treating me for 6 weeks and had only ever seen me look frightened or exhausted or grateful, and that morning I looked like someone she did not recognize. Calm, focused, a little amused. I had 3 things Adrian did not know I had. The first was the lab notebooks themselves, 11 years of handwritten data including every formulation, every adjustment, every patent disclosure, signed and dated and witnessed. Adrian had been working from photocopies of the most recent year. He did not have the foundational chemistry. Without it, the compound could not be reproduced. The second was a recording. 6 months before the poisoning, I had begun to notice small inconsistencies in the inventory logs at the lab. I had not suspected Adrian. I had suspected a junior researcher. I had installed a small voice-activated recorder in my office under the desk lamp. I had forgotten about it. It had been running on a rotating loop, automatically uploading to a private cloud drive my father had set up for me years earlier, accessible only with a key Adrian had never seen. The third was Marcus. My brother was not just the European director of my father's foundation. My father had left his entire estate, including controlling interest in the biotech firm, in a trust that named Marcus as sole trustee until my 35th birthday. Adrian believed I owned the firm. I did not. Marcus did. Adrian had been romancing the wrong sibling for years. I left the hospital on a Wednesday. I went to a hotel. I did not go home. I did not tell Adrian I had been discharged. For 4 days I sat in that hotel room with Marcus and a forensic accountant named Eleanor Park, no relation, and a lawyer named Charlotte Whitfield, whom my father had used for 30 years. We listened to the recordings. There were 17 relevant conversations on them. In one of them, Adrian and Vivian sat in my office and discussed how long they thought I would last in the coma, and which board members would vote with Adrian once I was gone. In another, Vivian laughed and said she always thought she was the smart one. In a third, Adrian said she made it too easy. She trusts everyone. I listened to that one twice. I made a note on a yellow legal pad. I wrote, "She will not make it easy now." On the 5th day, I called Adrian. He answered on the second ring. His voice was warm and broken, the voice of a man who had been waiting for this call, who had rehearsed it. He said, "Eleanor, oh my God, where are you? Are you safe? Please come home. I have been losing my mind." I let him talk for 90 seconds. Then I said, calmly, "Adrian, I am fine. I am at the Fairmont. I would like you to come see me tomorrow morning at 10. We need to talk about the company. Bring Vivian." There was a long silence. He said, "Why would I bring Vivian?" I said, "Because she should hear this too." Then I hung up. That was the cold turn. He told me later he did not sleep that night. He told me he and Vivian argued for hours about whether to come. He told me Vivian wanted to run. He told me he convinced her that running would look guilty, that I clearly did not know anything yet, that I was probably going to ask for a divorce and a settlement, and they could manage that. He told me they arrived at the hotel at 9:57 the next morning, holding hands. They knocked on the door of my suite. Marcus opened it. Their faces changed. I was sitting at the dining table in a navy blue dress that had belonged to my mother. My hair was pulled back. I had lost 20 pounds in the hospital, and my cheekbones looked like edges. Charlotte Whitfield was sitting beside me with a leather portfolio. Eleanor Park was sitting across from me with a laptop. Marcus stood behind my chair with his hands clasped in front of him. I gestured to the 2 empty chairs. I said, "Please sit down." Vivian started to cry before she sat. I have always admired that about her, the speed of her tears. Adrian said my name 3 times in 3 different tones, each one a different attempt to find the version of me that still loved him. He said Eleanor as a plea. He said Eleanor as a question. He said Eleanor as a command. I let him cycle through. Then I said, "I have spent the last 4 days listening to recordings from my office. There are 17 of them that pertain to you both. I am going to play 3. I played the one about my coma. I played the one where Vivian laughed. I played the one where Adrian said I trusted everyone. When the 3rd one ended, I closed the laptop. Adrian's face had gone the color of old paper. Vivian had stopped crying. She was looking at the table. I said, "You both have until 5 o'clock this afternoon to do one thing. You are going to sign every document that Charlotte hands you. You are going to surrender every claim, present and future, to the company, the compound, the trial, my personal accounts, our shared property, and my name. You are going to leave the city. Vivian, you are going to remove yourself from the unauthorized treatment regimen that you and Adrian have been administering, and you are going to enter the standard care pathway under a physician of my choosing. Because despite what you have done to me, I am not in the business of letting people die. Adrian, you are going to resign from every board you sit on, including the 2 you sit on in my name. If either of you fails to comply by 5 o'clock, the recordings will be in the possession of the King County Prosecutor's Office by 6. The charges available to them include attempted murder, criminal misuse of investigational substances, falsification of clinical trial data, wire fraud, and theft of trade secrets. The minimum sentence on the first count alone is 20 years. Adrian said, "Eleanor, please, please. I love you. I have always loved you. I made a mistake. She was dying. I panicked." I looked at him for a long time. Then I said, "You stirred my tea, Adrian. You stirred it for almost a minute. I remember the sound the spoon made. That is not panic. That is a recipe." He started to cry. Real tears this time. the first real tears I had ever seen from him. I felt nothing. That surprised me. I had expected to feel something, even contempt, even pity. I felt nothing. He was a piece of furniture I was preparing to move out of a room. Vivian signed first. Adrian signed 30 minutes later. Charlotte filed everything before lunch. That was not the end. That was the beginning. The board meeting was the following Tuesday. I had not told anyone except Marcus and Charlotte that I would be there. The agenda listed item 4 as the removal of the principal investigator and the installation of an interim leader. Adrian had been told by his ally on the board, a man named Lucas Reeve, that the vote was secured. Adrian arrived at 9 in a charcoal suit, freshly shaven, his hair newly cut. He had been told to look the part of a leader being asked to step up reluctantly. I watched him through the glass of the conference room from the lobby. He did not see me. He did not look for me. He had stopped believing I might come. I walked in at 9:11. The room went quiet. There were 14 people at the table. 8 of them were board members, 4 of them were senior executives, 2 of them were outside counsel. Adrian was at the head of the table. He stood up when I entered. I think it was reflexive. He had stood up for me at every dinner party we had ever attended. I said, "Please sit down, Adrian. This will be brief." I took the seat across from him. I placed a single folder on the table. I said, "Before this board votes on item 4, there is information you need to have. I would like to introduce my brother, Marcus Hale, the sole trustee of the Hale Family Trust, which holds 61% of the voting shares of this company." Marcus stepped into the room. 3 board members visibly flinched. Lucas Reeve made a small noise in his throat. Marcus said, "Good morning. I will be voting the trust's shares today. The trust will be voting against item 4. The trust will also be voting in favor of a new item, item 5, which I am adding to the agenda now under the provisions of Section 11 of the company bylaws. Item 5 is the removal of Adrian Voss from any current or proposed role at this company, the termination of all consulting agreements bearing his name, the clawback of all compensation paid to him in the last 36 months, and the immediate referral of his conduct to the appropriate federal regulatory bodies." The room did not move. Adrian's face did something I will remember until I die. It did not crumple. It froze. The freeze of a man who has just understood that the floor he has been standing on for years was not, in fact, a floor. Lucas Reeve cleared his throat and said, with respect, "Marcus, this is highly irregular." I said, "Lucas, you have been receiving payments of $12,000 a month for the last 14 months from a shell company registered in Delaware that is owned, ultimately, by Adrian's father. Eleanor Park has the documents. We can do this in front of the board, or we can do this in front of the FBI. Your choice." Lucas did not speak again. I opened the folder. I distributed copies. Inside were 3 things: the lab notebooks, photographed, with the discrepancies between the secured inventory and the trial records highlighted; the recordings, transcribed; the toxicology report from my hospital admission, cross-referenced with the unauthorized dosing logs, signed by the chief of hepatology. I let the board read for 4 minutes. I did not speak during those 4 minutes. I watched Adrian. He read the first page. He read the second page. Then he stopped reading and looked at his hands. The chair of the board, a woman named Charlotte Albright, who was no relation to my lawyer, looked up and said, "Eleanor, I am so sorry. I had no idea." I said, "I know. None of you had any idea." He was very good at being underestimated. That was his only real skill. The vote on item 4 was withdrawn. The vote on item 5 was unanimous. Adrian was escorted from the building by security at 10:42. His company card was retrieved at the front desk. His office had been packed into 2 boxes that were waiting for him at the curb. The locks on our house, which had been my house before the marriage, were changed before he reached the parking lot. The criminal charges came the following week. 3 counts. Adrian's lawyer tried for a plea. The prosecutor laughed. Vivian was charged separately with conspiracy and unlawful possession of an investigational substance. Both of their families issued statements. Adrian's mother, who had spent 6 years telling people I was lucky to have her son, refused to take her son's phone calls. Vivian's father, a retired federal judge, paid for her defense and then stopped speaking to her. The trial ran for 9 weeks. The recordings were played in open court. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Adrian got 22 years. Vivian got 11. I did not attend the sentencing. I sent Marcus. That was 18 months ago. I am writing this from a house in the San Juan Islands that I bought with a small portion of the settlement from the civil suit I filed against Adrian's father, whose involvement in laundering Lucas Reeves' payments was established at the criminal trial. The house faces west. The deck looks out over a stretch of water that goes gray in the afternoon and silver in the evening. There is a garden. I am learning to grow tomatoes. I am not very good at it yet. The compound is in Phase 3 trials. The patient roster has expanded to 240. The waiting list is gone. We added a compassionate use pathway last spring. Vivian's name was on the original list of candidates for that pathway. I approved it before I knew her name was on it. When I saw it, I let it stand. She receives the treatment in a federal medical facility. I am told she is doing well. I do not ask for updates. I have a partner now. His name is Nathan. He is a marine biologist who runs a research station on the next island. We met at a town meeting about ferry schedules. He brought me a thermos of coffee on our second meeting because I had mentioned, in passing, that I drank it black with 1 spoonful of brown sugar. He had remembered. The first time he kissed me, I cried for a long time. And he did not ask me why. And he did not make it about himself, and he did not need me to explain. He just held me. He has never once asked me for anything I did not want to give. He has never once made me feel that my work was a problem. He sends me articles he thinks I would find interesting. He cooks me breakfast on Sundays. He has a daughter from his first marriage, a quiet 13-year-old named Sophia, who has decided to become a chemist when she grows up and who asks me questions I have to think hard to answer. I am teaching her how to use a pipette this summer. Marcus visits every other month. My mother is moving in next year, into the cottage at the back of the property. I bought it for her without telling her. And when I told her, she sat down on the kitchen floor and cried for half an hour, which is the most emotion I have ever seen from her. Sometimes, in the evenings, I think about Adrian. Not often. The thought is brief, the way you might briefly think of a house you used to live in. I think about the cup. I think about his hands curling my fingers around it. I think about the look on his face in the conference room the moment the floor disappeared. I do not feel triumph anymore. I felt triumph for the first few weeks, and then it burned off, the way a fever burns off. And what is underneath it is just the quiet of having become, finally, the person he refused to believe I could be. He thought I was the cup. I was the recipe. Last week I received a letter from him. The prison had cleared it for delivery. I held it in my hands for a long time on the deck. Nathan was inside reading. The afternoon light was gold. I did not open the letter. I walked down to the water. I burned it in the fire pit I keep on the beach. I watched it curl and blacken and lift in the wind. I went back to the house. Nathan asked if I was all right. I said yes, and I meant it. And I have meant it every day since. This is the life I was supposed to have. I see that now. He did not poison me to kill me. He poisoned me to keep me small. He failed. The thing he could not bear to imagine, the thing he had spent 6 years making sure I would never become, was the thing I always was. He just did not have the eyes for it. I have the eyes now. I have the house, the garden, the work, the man, the brother, the mother, the recipe. He handed me the cup. I drank it, and it did not kill me. It made me a queen.